Jeff Van Boskirk, owner of the Second Floor Gallery in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. It's an old church that was built in 1859, and the main gallery sits in the sanctuary part, which is on the second floor, hence the name Second Floor Gallery. And the first floor then lends itself to artist studios. An artist is anybody that can produce something that will evoke that emotion, that will make someone feel a certain way.
My name is Julie Lane.
Scott Meyer.
Martin Velez. I'm an artist. Being raised in New York, I saw a lot of young artists that were trying to make a movement in New York. And I was introduced to art via graffiti. So originally I started doing graffiti, subways, walls, mural pieces. And then from there I sort of graduated to oil, paint, some acrylics, and I started doing some canvas paintings, and I've been painting now for a good amount of over 20 years.
Well, I was always interested in drawing as a kid, and every time I went somewhere I looked at the book covers and the magazine covers and tried to draw those things. So I've always been interested in, I've always drawn, but I guess in high school is when I really decided that I was trying to be an artist.
Since I was very little, I've always had sketchbooks, and when I should have been paying attention in class, I was always drawing sketches of the teachers or of the other students or something from my imagination.
So I went and actually stole my very first set of paint because I couldn't afford, to buy a set of oil paints, and then I actually bought the canvas panels at the time because I could afford that. So I went and did my first painting via Bob Ross style, and I was overwhelmed because I can actually do it, and I was very pleased about that. And I said, hey, I wonder what else I can do.
I had the opportunity to study art in Florence for a summer, and when I was traveling around afterwards, it just kind of hit me that this is what I wanted to devote the rest of my life to.
Most of the training I have is just from the artist themselves. I have a business background with other businesses. I've owned other businesses for 17 years before I opened this. So the business background is there, but the art background was mainly from just learning from the artists.
Generally the idea is kind of vague, and it's a matter of how do I want to express this idea visually. And that's where the longest phase is, where I do a bunch of sketches, little napkins. Wherever I'm at, I do little sketches if I think what my idea is going to be. So ultimately I figure out how I want to express it. And then it's a matter of finding models or props or whatever I need to do to paint it.
It would be realism, but I also try to have something behind it. Like in every portrait I do, it's very important for me to capture the expression and to have a feeling come through in the painting.
I'm actually experimenting now with palette knife. It's sort of a palette knife painting style, and I really like the way it looks because it gives me an impressionistic feel to it, which I'm always looking for that. I'm so happy doing palette knife paintings. They're rich in color for me, and I can apply paint and not worry about it. And I don't look for any particular structure when I do the palette knife paintings. It's just more like applying the paint and waiting to see what happens, and then I step back and that sort of thing. But I like to think that paintings seem to reflect everyday life. And I also like to put a piece of me in every painting, something personal about myself.
I think the most difficult in this area is getting the people to look at the art as fine art and not as just posters, because we don't have a lot of other galleries in the area. They're not used to being able to find the quality art that we have in the immediate Harrisburg area. So I think that's the biggest problem we have. But we try to educate the people when they come in and teach them about the paintings and the drawings and the photography.
I think people have a preconceived notion of what art is. I think that kind of hampers it a little bit. Like, I think generally, especially in this area, I think people tend to think, a still life or an apple on a table, and that's art. And that anything that gets kind of away from that is starting to get away from what they think of art as.
when you look at, you know, a person maybe having a crush on someone, that person being rejected, and that feeling like that's the same way I feel when I first moved out here, and I would try to show my work, and people were like, you know, like, no, it's not really, it doesn't fit our style, and it's hurtful, you know. But you learn to grow. You just don't crawl under a rock or put your head in the sand. You pick up and you say, okay, no, I'll try something else. But I think rejection, for any artist, is probably the hardest thing.
The most difficult part is being an artist I think. It's for me, it's hard because, you know, I paint, and I'm not necessarily happy with what I paint. So I paint again, and ultimately every time I paint, I'm happy with it, but it's never 100% happy, I guess. So ultimately, it's a series of failure after failure, which I guess it's tough to, you know, it's tough to take every time you do a painting, but I guess someday I'll paint the painting that I am trying to paint, I guess. It's hard to explain, but the hardest part about being an artist is being an artist. I don't know. I wish I didn't want to paint, because then I could just be an accountant, you know, go to work every day, you know, calculate numbers, and that would be the end of that. And I could go home and sit on the couch and not think about anything. But when you have to paint, it's tough.
When most buyers come in, they're coming in, they're not sure what they're looking for. They might like a piece.
Think of the box. Some artists will paint within that box. Well, I like to paint around the box. Inside, outside, right on the line. I don't care. I don't have restrictions when I paint. If there are restrictions, I'd rather not paint.
I think what I mostly get ideas from is just people. I see people, and every day, whether I'm walking down the street or in a grocery store, I'll look at someone and I'll just capture something about them almost in my head, and I'll just want to paint that. Like whether it's just some glance, some feeling that I can think that they're expressing, it's just something that makes me want to translate that into art.
A lot of my creative stuff I get in during the times that I'm sleeping. I could just be in deep sleep, and all of a sudden I'll get an image, and I'll get up in the middle of the night, and I'll draw a quick rendition of it. And in the morning I go and apply it to canvas.
Generally, the theme is the perseverance of humanity, but how I express that seems to change every now, you know, evolve, I guess. But the root of it is humanity overcoming, you know, all the challenges that's involved with that, with being human. You know, people, I think, generally have a kind of a pioneer spirit about them. It's just because if you think about all the things that the caveman had to get through to get to here, obviously there's something deep within people that is worthwhile. Maybe I should paint apples, and then I'll be all right.